All right, good morning, Cougs. How's everybody doing? I hope you're well and enjoying a beautiful day here in the Palouse. Those of you in other parts of the state that may be joining us, I hope your weather's as spectacular as our morning is. My name's Don Reed, and I'll be conducting today's session. One of the things that struck me about today, I was looking at the calendar, and we did our first session on April 2nd. So we've already gone over 4 weeks of having the Daily Coug Connect. So those of you that have been tuning in regularly, I hope you've been enjoying these, finding it useful, especially a good diversion from wherever you may be working remotely from. I'm at French Ad this morning, French Administration in my office to conduct the session, and hope you'll enjoy what we're going to cover. Kind of gets at the background of everything that we've been seeing from all the different presenters. The title, as you can see, is You Can Teach Old Dogs New Tricks. This is not about your pets. This will be about how all of us learn and grow, develop new patterns, maybe look at old patterns that get in the way and how can we maybe override those. So as we get going today, I am going to ask you on 1 or 2 slides, especially the one coming up, to be prepared to annotate. And those of you that maybe have not seen that feature, what you're going to do is in the upper part of your screen, I believe, you will see a bar that has kind of controls on it. One of them is the annotate. And I would like you to click on the annotate button. And then if you would please choose the, or hover over, stamp, and then slide down onto the little panel and choose whatever stamp you want to use. I'll just choose the star for mine. And we're going to get into the next piece here, which is, my slide is not advancing when I have that. So we will do this. Okay, everybody's stamping all over the place. That looks great. All right. Let's do this with the annotate. I'm going to clear everything for just a moment. And now with the statement, people continue to learn and develop even into later years of life. Go ahead and put your stamp close to the word true or false as we go along. All right. Looks like we're getting quite a few people believing that yes, we can continue to learn and grow, meaning we do develop new patterns, and we're going to talk about the mechanics of that in just a minute. So I'm going to clear this one for just a moment. And then going down on to the next question, same thing here. Let's get your annotation tool. And learning new work habits and patterns are easy or difficult? Some in between. All right, great. Let everybody finish up there. Okay, I don't see anybody saying it's easy. So all of us, especially as we've learned to work remotely, if you've been like me, it is an adjustment. There's some things that we need to do differently, right? Along the way, we've been seeing many sessions on Daily Coug Connect, all the way from, a virtual dance party and broomstick yoga and stretching and chair yoga, meditation, new recipes, all types of things that we've been learning. So let's dive into those a little bit. I'm going to clear all annotations, and then let's talk about the next slide. So next piece here is, let's think about all the things that we have been covering for the past 4.5 weeks in Daily Coug Connect, or anything around the work issue like working remote, how to set up a home office, how do I've had 2 monitors at work, I only have 1 monitor at home when I work remotely. So any number of things, and it doesn't have to be tied just to those that I've mentioned. Just think about one behavior skill that you've had to learn or get better at due to our current situation. Kind of hold on to that, maybe jot it down to the side there. If you're comfortable, you could go into the chat box and list out any that may be coming to mind. So anybody that wants to share on the chat, feel free to go right into there. Oh, somebody coping with anxiety. Okay. Right on the screen. Okay. All right, in the chat, we've got sitting at a computer. Yeah, especially for folks that tend to be a little more active and moving around, learning patience. Would love to dive into that a little bit more, Alex, but you know, just it's different when we're at this new work environment. Ergonomics, that's been a good one. Hopefully you've been getting some good information around the information that Sarah's been sharing. Balancing, helping kids and work, and a laptop in my actual lab. Okay, all right, good ones. And actually working was off for other reasons. All right, so clear everything. And let's move on and start talking about some of the mechanics here. So if any of you did join on the very first one on April 2nd, I actually talked about the growth mindset. And quick refresh on growth mindset. So we're not going to spend too much time here, but we talked about the idea of growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And one of the elements to also remember about this, rarely is anyone totally growth or totally fixed mindset. We tend to bounce back and forth depending on what the issue is, how we're feeling that day, how life is treating us, those types of things. But in general, what is your overall approach? So fixed mindset basically said, I'm either good at it or not. The other side of that, growth mindset, is I can learn to do anything I want. Challenges can help me grow. So going back to the very first slide and the very first true-false question, I think all of you said, yes, we can learn and grow, and that's a great representation and extension of what we were talking about in growth mindset. So let's start talking about how do we use some of the mechanics of what's going on inside our brain and inside of us that actually helps us. So we're going to look a little bit at rewiring patterns, maybe forming new patterns and habits. And that comes down to an element that has been termed neuroplasticity of the brain. So it's basically the idea that the brain can form and reorganize all the connections that we have within us. Now, background, I don't have it anywhere on my presentation, but we literally have apparently billions and billions of neurons and receptors in our brain that are firing these connections while I'm speaking, while I'm trying to look ahead to the next thing I'm going to say. You're sitting there taking it in, maybe pondering, you know, what I'm saying, or maybe you've got a diversion on an email that's coming in, but the brain is just really super active. So that starts to bring up this neuroplasticity. If you look over to the right over here, real simplistic way to look at it, but basically new thoughts and skills carve out new pathways. We're going to look at that a little bit deeper here in a moment. Repetition and practice strengthen these pathways. So, you know, going all the way back to, you know, grade school and repetition after repetition of our math tables, our times tables, all of those kinds of things, it worked. You know, it's in there. If I was to say 2 times 2, everybody, boom, we've got the answer immediately. There was a time when we did not know the answer to that, and that was a new pathway that we were forming. So we're going to take a look at those things. Here's an interesting piece to think about. Old pathways get used less and less, and they start to weaken. There is some brain research evidence that tends to show that some unused patterns or habits that maybe we haven't touched or thought about for many years actually start to get pruned off as far as the synaptic pathways that are being formed that really form these habits that we have. Another way to look at that is think about when you were maybe 12 or 15 years old. Think about being a goofy teenager, you know, running around in 7th or 8th grade. You know, those patterns and habits that we had at that point in time in our life versus who we are now as an adult. So many of us have been in the workforce, maybe have been married, had families, whatever it may be. We've learned and grown in different ways, and some of those old patterns back when we were 12, 15 years old, whatever it may be, those patterns, they don't, you can't find them in your brain and go in there and surgically remove them. But the brain does start to weaken and lessen the emphasis on that, the chemical transmissions that are going on between the synaptic chasm there, those lessen and they do start to die out. So that's kind of the background of what we're going to be talking about here. So forming new patterns. In the chat box, please list any of the daily Coug Connect sessions you've watched that introduced you to new information, and maybe pick one that maybe you've been trying to do more of. Maybe it's the mindfulness, maybe it's been some of the chair yoga, whatever it is. Thinking, let's see, what do we got here? Claudine, not eating every time I stand up. I've got that problem too. I've been trying to do better. Ergonomics, yeah, the ergonomic stuff has been very good. All right, getting up more, moving around, mindfulness and yoga, meditation. Great, we'll come back to those a little bit. The Canva that Jade shared yesterday. All right, just reading all these, checking in and continuing to connect with coworkers from a distance. Yeah, it's a little different than just walking down the hallway or into the break room and seeing your coworkers. All right, Angela, Canva and chair yoga. Great, thank you all for sharing that. So just think about all those different ones, which, by the way, I think most of you probably know that out on the Daily Coug Connect website, we do have just about 100%, not all of the sessions got recorded. The very first one did not get recorded, and then there was one other one. For some reason, the video files did not transfer over, but all of them should be out there and available except for those two. Oh, great. Claudine, UW shared a nice 15-minute relaxation routine. Okay. All right, great. Good to know. All right, so thinking about those, let's move on here and let's start talking about some of the brain basics, what's behind forming our new patterns. This is a pretty complex map. You can find it, just Google out there, you know, Your Amazing Brain and look at images and you'll find this one. I thought it captured quite a bit of what's going on. By the way, this is kind of a representation of what is called a mind map. Somebody that's a little more gifted artistically than I am, but notice you don't have to be really gifted. You can capture notes and thoughts and really hold information real well. So they talk about the insula, the prefrontal cortex, the limbic system, the hippocampus, the amygdala, and so forth. What we're going to be really focusing on is this prefrontal cortex, the higher level thinking and patterning and thought processes that humans have. All right, so notice down here in the lower bottom, it says this shrinks with age, but can grow back with practice, meditation, using it. All right, so that's an interesting concept right there. So hold on to that while we keep going down our journey. All right, so just real quickly gonna clear the drawings out here for a moment. All right, so what we start to have is, this is an image of some of the cells in our brain. So there's several different types of cells, neurons that are firing off and creating the thought patterns and so forth. The glia cells, which tend to support and nourish and take waste away and so forth, they're also in there packed in. So a number of different cell types that are in there. We're going to dive deeper into what these things are going on. So here's the cell body of an individual cell. You can see one over here. You've got these, what I'll call them tendrils, but all these different little arms, if you will, and axon coming out. And we're going to dive deeper into this little glowing thing right here. That's an actual, you know, jump across the synaptic nerve that we're going to look at. This graphic came from Caltech, and I know it's a little bit hazy to see some of the things, but this is the end of one of those tendrils, and along each of those tendrils, you've got hundreds and hundreds of these little shaped, I like to call them little mushroom shaped things, but the presynaptic cell, on the other side you have the postsynaptic cell, and these little transmitters right in here, glia proteins, and then the receptors for the neurotransmitters, these little things are going to be jumping across here. So when you first heard 2 times 2 equals 4, you didn't know that, and a couple of these cells fired off and some information was transmitted from one cell to another. Short little pattern. The more you said it to yourself, the more you had teachers saying it to you, the more you had brothers, sisters, parents, everybody in the world telling you 2 times 2 is 4, etc., more and more there was actual growth, and more of these transmitters, if you will, start to blossom at the end of this little mushroom-shaped thing. More neurotransmitters are produced, and there's a stronger jump across that synaptic cleft, if you will. So that's how the pattern starts happening. Let's blow that up. So now we've zoomed out from our electron microscope view. Let's pretend these are various cells that we've been able to kind of pull out and examine from our brain. So just imagine them with all their little tendrils and so forth. And I'm going to get up here with my annotation tool real quick. And let me choose, let's try, let me actually go with this one. All right, so 2 times 2 is 4. A cell fires off, and it just connects a few times. The next time we hear it, the brain doesn't randomly just put it somewhere else. It says, have I seen something like this before? Oh yeah, it's over here, and it goes over the same pathway, a little bit faster this time because of the growth of that stuff, and extends the pattern a little bit more. So think of that. Time after time, you said it to yourself, others saying it to you, it just kept going over the same pattern, extending it. So it's touching other cells, keeps going and going. Every time you repeat that to yourself, this little pattern keeps growing. So the challenge becomes is, we've got it down. We get whatever the pattern is, we've got it down real well. So it's been over that. One estimate is we've repeated the pattern over 10,000 times. That pattern gets burned in. It literally goes from not only electronic, but there seems to be evidence that it's a chemical process, and it just is like burning into a microchip. We got the pattern. All right. So one thing I used to be really good at was eating Oreo cookies. I had a pattern in there that was well over 10,000 repetitions over the lifetime. And I finally decided one day, I'm not going to do that anymore. It's not healthy. I'm getting older. I'm seeing a few signs medically that maybe that's not good for me, and other things like it. So I said, I'm going to start eating healthier. Now, the good thing is I like healthy food, but how do I make that pattern override something that has a pleasure response and has been burned in there very well? Well, you start doing things like we just talked about. When faced with a choice, nope, I eat fruit, I eat oranges, I eat apples, I eat grapes, and I do really like all of those, which is good. And the more you repeat the pattern, that pattern continues to grow, get stronger, get stronger. I've been doing that now for about 12 years, and it's a real strong pattern. Now, I will be honest with you. If I see a package of Oreos in the grocery store, it's tough to pass them up. That pattern's still lingering in there. But the stronger pattern says, nope, I'm eating healthier now. All right, so that's just one example of how we look at this whole thing and try to form new patterns. That's the basics of it. So with that said, moving on, think about what new opportunities you're facing. We've already put it out there from either the daily Coup Connect sessions. We had our little chat box thing about areas one thing you'd like to get better at or grow in, learn more patience, that type of thing. So what opportunities are we facing? And notice how that's phrased. What, not challenges, but opportunities. It's an opportunity to learn and grow, create these patterns, keep our brain exercising. And the more you do use it, the better. That's great. How can you use this information to improve your longer term outcomes, right? So we talked about some of the mechanics. You've seen how the structures actually work a little bit, or a representation. So repetition is key. So when you find something that you want to start practicing more of and get better at, I'll take the mindfulness. The more you do that, the faster you go into a deeper meditative state. You get better at it, you're able to tune out noise and so forth. So the repetition is key. Try to tie positive emotion to the repetition. So even if it's a skill that you're uncomfortable with it initially, try to find what the payoff is. Try to find that emotional response that says, oh, hey, yeah, this is going to be good for me. I'm learning, I'm growing. It's good for my brain to do this. I'm going to get the pattern down. Keep focusing on that. So the repetition, tying it to a positive emotion, and then that overall growth mindset. Have that expectation of growth. How can I keep growing? How can I keep learning as I go through my life? Okay. So to continue, a couple things I just want to share as we start getting towards the end of this is think back, look at the previous Daily Code Connects, find areas you want to grow in, continue deeper dives into this information if you choose to learn more about how that patterning works. So one thing, there's a great article out there if you Google the 4 underlying principles of changing your brain. It's a Forbes article out there. That has a real nice summary. It's in layman's terms. I really like it. So if you have the time, maybe take a look at that. Another Google thing is just Google neuroplasticity and learning, or learning patterns, neurons, patterns, anything that has to do with the brain if you want a little bit deeper dive around that. Education and neuroplasticity, any of those types of topics will bring up all kinds of information about this patterning that we all have been doing our whole life anyway. Now you just have a little bit deeper dive. So just wanted to start wrapping that up, and just want to let you know, thank you, first of all, for joining today. And tomorrow we have Arturo Gavilanes, and he'll be doing 5 steps to giving feedback and what to do with it. So I'm going to tune into that, so I hope you can too. Thanks for joining us.